I'm John Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer magazine podcast, and happy new year, our first one of the year. And I figure instead of trying to bug someone or to do one like right at the beginning of the new year, or try to record one a few weeks before, because it is always such a fun time during the holiday season to try to get people to do it, I just am going to drag in our president, our, well, you can sit up now, our
Nice to kind of lean back.
founder of Brewer magazine, and also the founder of Abettor Brewing, Tyler Montgomery. We are, how many years now are we at? 12? Are we going into our 12th year of Brewer magazine now? I think I've lost count.
Yeah, 12, 13th. 13th
13.
full year,
Yeah.
10 fully in print.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, well, cheers to you, buddy. Happy New Year. I got my Ohio
Cheers.
Pint Day glass, and I know
Happy
you
New Year.
being in, you got your Kentucky Proud one because you're a
Kentucky
Kentucky
Proud, little
brewer.
Kentucky Guild.
So happy New Year. How are things going? I think you guys just passed your fifth, going on to 6 years now at the
Yeah, it'll
brewery.
be 6 years in April.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of things, and I think I remember when we started, or when we started the magazine, it was like getting these insights for people. You wanted more insights. You wanted to be able to come up with questions yourself. You went and started a brewery, and you just wrote on our Substack a really interesting piece as well about like what you've learned, because breweries have changed even in the 6 years since you opened, 7 years since you started probably thinking about it. Are
Yeah.
there things that you would do a little different from that, the first time you opened Abettor? You guys have had, you're on your second location now there in Winchester, Kentucky. I mean, what have been some of those learning curves that you're looking forward, and we'll talk about going into 2025 as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I talked about, I think, in the Substack was starting with revenue. I kind of had this idea because the way Brewer, when I launched Brewer, we launched with no money, so there was no funding, there's no VC, there was no bank, nothing. So I mean, we started selling around it and went to print, off of a credit card, and then started paying it down and building up capital and savings. Um, that's the life of a magazine. A magazine can work that way very easily, but you can't pre-sell you can't pre-sell a ton of beer. So that
Yeah.
industry operates completely different. And I mean, I understood that going into it,
Yeah.
but the money and your potential for um, higher immediate gains kind of is bigger before you start than it's going to be once you launch. Even when we launched in 2019, there was it's not that we had a hard time getting people to come through the doors, but we started with a nano brewery. We started with a barrel and a half system. We
Hmm.
had 5 fermenters. We also had 5 brights that were a barrel each. Our fermenters were 40 gallons, but the bright tanks were 31 gallons. So even if we moved everything into the bright tanks and could tap off the bright tanks, we're still effectively losing some um, capacity. Luckily, the bright tanks didn't work. They leaked out everywhere. We had issues with those from day one, and it moved us to kegs really quickly. That worked fine, but we started with a 3 week window before opening, brewed like crazy. Had 5 different beers on tap and another 15 guest taps, and it was all gone by week. By the second week or first week, going into the first week. So we didn't have a sales problem. The only issue is when you do open, you're going to run into a million things that you're going to have to take care of. A bartender's probably going to quit, so you're going to probably have to hire somebody else. You're going to need something's going to break, so you're going to have to fix that. If you own the building, I mean, most businesses are in a tri-net lease anyways. So we actually still owned our building. But we still had to do roof repairs because there were some random leaks as soon as some major rain hit. Weird things just catch up on you. So it's hard to like really get your legs under you to grow rapidly at that
Hmm.
level. So you've got to really think about the size and the volume strategy you want to put out. You don't have to necessarily think about distribution out of the gate, but you do need to think about the size. And a barrel and a half system, though it worked for us in 2019, was a really bad decision. I think I said in the Substack, one of the it's kind of a sad thing because it's not a blessing, but it worked for us, with uh, COVID and having an epidemic. We got lucky with the uh, stimulus check. We kept our main employee on, and that allowed us to argue for a little bit more money. So we recouped a little bit of that money. Um, and then I took it and threw it into Apple stock, which then split 4 times in 2020. So that gave us the capital to expand into the new space. Also, lending was a lot different in 2020. Every bank wanted to, help people grow and help the economy grow. That's not the same now. Money's
Yeah.
expensive. Interest rates are through the roof. And it's hurting everybody because everybody was selling their homes back in 2020. So now everybody's on, different interest rate payments. Property taxes have gone up because of the cost of houses. And as soon as the house sells, then the PVA knows that the property's gone up, and heck, your property taxes go through the roof. So it happens with the same with any type of building sales and commercial sales too.
Mhm.
So property taxes are going through the roof, and if you're going to do it, you got to start out in a way that you have a lot of free capital. Bringing on partners, bringing on venture capitalists isn't a problem if you can find them. They're hard to find. The industry's shifting dramatically. What we talked about in 2016, 2017 was the death of the brew pub, and the brew pub model was going straight out the door, and it wasn't even a conversation anymore. The brew pub
Yep.
model has come full circle, and if you're going to start a brewery without food, you're out of your mind. You've got to
Mm.
have that kind of, I don't know, you've got to be that somewhat of a thing to all people. You've got to have your spirits in there. You've got to have, if you can legally make a seltzer, if you can legally make a cider. Doesn't mean you should be distributing these things, but you should have one in your tap room. It's going to be more cost effective if you can make it in house versus buying it wholesale. But
Yeah.
if you want to support one of your local cideries, by all means, do that because they need the love too.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's starting out today. You're going to need probably double the amount of income, like startup capital that we had in 2019. I mean, it was a shoestring budget when we started out. When we did the second one, it was also a shoestring budget. I'm impressed with how well we did the second one, but still our overhead today is high, and dealing with rising costs is difficult. One of the lucky things that we did moving into, I think, 2023, everybody was raising their cost per pint. We dropped our cost to move more
Mhm.
volume, and it helped us for a short period of time, drew in a younger crowd that was, maybe not quite Gen Z, but close to it. And that kind of helped us for a minute. Well, then that kind of dried up. And recently we had to make the move where we, raised cost even over where we were. So, now we've kind of aligned with everybody else.
Mhm.
Things that we've made a lot of decisions this year due to financial issues that, um, kind of suck. And it hasn't, 2024 was not really the funnest year. We actually did better revenue wise, but we saw less of it. We've had a glycol chiller go out twice. So that's taken, about 30K off the top. So
Yeah.
that wasn't something we were prepared for. We're hoping in 2025 it doesn't go out again because, well, it can't go out in the beginning of 2025 because it's still already currently out. So we got to get that fixed, and then, so there's just, there's a ton of things that just, they'll come at you. Um, it's like running through a gauntlet and getting hit with wiffle ball bats all the time.
Well, one of the things that we talked about, and I actually looked this up before we started recording, that the Brewers Association announced, their end of year thing, and I don't have the exact numbers, but I think it was 399 breweries closed in 2024, and less opened. It was the first time since 2005 that this has happened, where the closings outpaced the openings. Why do you think that is? We kind of started talking about it before I hit record. What do you think the industry is doing to itself, or are consumers doing it to the industry?
I think there's a massive shift in craft beer. And I don't, I, while there are closures occurring, and of course the volume is dropping off for some people, we're seeing a lot of people, or a lot of numbers shift. We're looking at, they're like, oh, well, the volume's changing. So, the volume output for craft isn't as high as it was 6 years ago. That's true, but the thing is now people started drinking more hyper locally, even in 2018.
Hmm.
So you're seeing smaller breweries open up, and they're not making up this huge amount of the market. They're also not doing these. The packaging isn't as high, so they're moving a lot of volume inside their tap rooms. They may be doing some um, self distro, and I think it's just clouding the numbers a little bit, because I know people are still drinking craft, and I know there's craft breweries that are, of all sizes, that are still doing well. I think when you are as big as some of our cover stories starting out in 2015 and 2016, those breweries were huge, and so you have to make up a lot of market. And every time a smaller brewery opens up in another city, they're going to steal some market share. So I think that shifts a little bit. Additionally, like we were talking about before we got on the air, I think craft beer, and this is going to sound awful, but we've been talking about it a lot inside Better with the some customers and things like that this week, and I think craft beer has done somewhat of a disservice to the consumer coming out of 2020. Um, you know, Craft beer wants something exciting. We started out seeing the West Coast IPAs, and just having craft was unique for a while. Then you saw a hazy IPA, and that was the hype around that was so cool. Then you saw the New England. Then you saw the Kvik Yeast, and then you saw what was that really light, like almost clear IPA that came out back in what
Brute
20? What was that?
Brute IPA.
Yeah, the Brute IPA. I mean, there was just so many. Now we're into the lager revolution. There's different things that these breweries were doing that were exciting the consumer. And now when you walk down the aisle inside of a liquor store, it's mixed 12 packs of basically the same IPA brand, but with a mixed amount of hops for it's changing the flavor or trying to. And I just think that the consumer's bored with it. There's nothing to get excited about anymore. I mean, okay, they do drink, the consumer drinks high noons and seltzers and things like that, but they're not expecting their craft brewery to be making a really good seltzer. They're not expecting their craft brewery to be making a really good cider. And I know we had that article, or the podcast last year, and it was talking about how if you can do it, go for it. And I think you should if that's where your passion is. But I don't think you have to be all things um, to your consumer. And I think the consumer wanted really good, well developed craft, and they just haven't gotten anything new and innovative in 4 years or more. It's getting stale, and just reflavoring your IPA or reflavoring your stout. It's just old hat, and people are bored with it. So they're not drawn to go to the tap room because they don't see the breweries as innovative anymore. They're not getting a mixed variety pack of 4 or 5 different unique beers. They're getting one product that is adjusted 3 or 4 different times. And I think it's just wearing the consumer down. And it's not exciting them to go do these visits. What used to, you would get a variety pack, back in 2010, you get a variety pack and it'd be 4 or 5 different beers. You're like, wow, this brewery really knows what they're doing across the board. I want to go check this place out. Oh my God, they've got 30 different beers on inside, not including the ones that I had in the variety pack. This place is magic, you know.
Yeah.
But you don't get that anymore. You get literally like IPA number two, you know, to the third power each time. It's the same stuff. And I just think that craft is losing its innovation, and it's becoming just a creation of the same old thing. Let's create another hazy. Let's use the same hazy we have now, but let's do it this way. And you know, to the consumer, it all kind of starts to taste the same. And
Yeah.
you start doing these light lagers, and you're going to try and are we going to try and compete with macro beer? I mean, I'm pretty sure back in the late 90s and early 2000s, that's what caused the bubble to burst then.
Yeah.
So we're not going to compete with pricing on this, and the consumer doesn't want us to. They don't. They're going to drink, their macro products just like we do when we're at home and not at the brewery. And
Yeah.
I think they want excitement from us, and we need to re-engage the consumer with, you know, something that really drives home the creative aspects of craft beer. Um, and we're just not seeing it anymore. We're not seeing it at all. The
Yeah.
barrel aged thing was cool for a little bit. Everybody did it, and the consumer loved it. But just like everybody did New England IPAs, and everybody did hazies, and everybody did the West Coast for a minute, and everybody's doing the lagers now. It's cool, but they need something unique. But I think because we're always kind of craft is always going to have to chase innovation and uniqueness. If you have a really good flagship, like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale or something like that, or Fat Tire for that matter, the Boston Lager, these flagships are phenomenal, and these breweries are lucky to be able to hang their hat on those. But
Hmm.
there's very few breweries that are going to be able to do that. Everybody else is going to have to chase innovation, kind of not stop chasing the dollar and start chasing, you know, the passion of craft again.
Yeah. I actually saw an interesting Facebook reel, or Instagram reel, I guess it was, from, I think it's a comedian. His name's Dan Harumi. Have you seen this?
I don't know.
Where he was talking about why craft beer is over, and he's not a craft beer guy. He's just like a comedian, Instagram guy or whatever that was posting stuff. Someone posted it on one of my local beer pages, and I'll send it to you to take a whole look at. But basically, the premise is when it comes to we're aging ourselves out of craft beer. We're getting older as the consumer that started this, let's say 15, 20 years ago. I was in my mid 20s at the time, so were you, even earlier 20s, and now we're in those 40s, and we like that. But at the same time, like this Dan guy was talking about is kids that have been brought to breweries their whole life.
I
It's
did see
not
this.
cool
Yeah.
for them. You did see that? Okay. It's not cool to do that. So like in a lot of kids' memories, they just remember craft breweries when, 15 years ago when they were 5 years old, being this place that mom and dad would take them that they could run around and, and or just sit and like play. And then now they're coming to age of now you're like, well, my parents took me there. I don't want to have to go to those places again. Is that, it was interesting because I had never thought of it that way, that it's
Yeah.
just like this like almost PTSD type thing of like, well, I've already lived this. I don't want to do this now that I'm old enough. Do you think that's going to be something, a new factor that I never thought about?
I thought it was funny, and I did think about it for a second. Um, the amount of first beers I served to people that used to come with their kids and are now 21 is shocking. Like, um, and it happens almost regularly anymore.
Sure.
Um, and I, I, I do disagree. One, we're not that old. Craft beer, especially in our area. If we were West Coast, sure, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Like when we were, when we were having kids you weren't having kids in your 20s. I wasn't
Right.
either. So, it's not like we've had toddlers in craft breweries since we were in our 20s. Craft beer in the East Coast, and I guess we're in the South and you're North or whatever. It's still relatively new. If you think about,
Yeah.
a 15-year-old industry, that puts you into, 2010. So
Mm,
that was kind of the like launch of craft beer in Central Kentucky.
yeah.
Um, kind of in Kentucky in general. So it's still relatively new. So there's not a lot of kids that have been brought up in it. I think it's funny though because there are are a family place. It's the community center for a lot of places. Whether it's you're the only brewery in town, like Abettor is the only brewery in our little headquarter town, and it's community space. People come with their families. They come have dinner. May have a cocktail, may have a beer. Who knows? We go through a ton of soda because we have kids coming in. And then so I I could see how that could be a thing, but I think it's really just more him making a point of how there's kids always at breweries anymore. And I have heard some like complaints of adults without kids going to some breweries and they're annoyed with it because there's just kids everywhere.
Mm,
I'm like, well, it's a family establishment. If you want to be at a bar, go to a bar.
yep.
It's breweries aren't bars. They've always been, the social hub, whether that's in America or, in the old countries, back in Europe. That's what we're supposed to be. I had a good friend here in town that's much, much older than me, but grew up in New York, in upstate New York, and you know, that's where they went. They went to their local brewery all the time. When he was growing up in the 50s and 60s, that's what the families did. Um, they weren't bringing their kids at 8 or 9 p.m., but
Yeah.
they would come in. They may have dinner. They would have a couple of pints. Go home, put the kids to bed. Maybe mom or dad come back out, and go to the brewery again. That was their watering hole, and it's their passion because it's made there. It's unique
Yeah.
to that location. So it's like the civic center of modern America.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of I thought it was funny, but I do kind of disagree with that. I don't think that's what's the downside of um, young people drinking. And I also disagree that you can look at numbers and you can make numbers do whatever. But somebody told me, especially during COVID, they were like, stop paying attention to what the news and media tell you. And I know we're media, but we're Business Insights.
Yeah.
But stop looking at what the masses are telling you and start paying attention to what's actually going on around you. And what I see are new, young, unique consumers coming in regularly. I see it in not just our brewery, I see it in every brewery I go into. There's new consumers all the time. And I honestly just think, you know, craft, like I said before, craft has stopped as a whole chasing innovation and it's stopped, you know, pushing the, excitement of craft beer. We're chasing numbers.
Yeah.
Why else would we make a seltzer? It's about chasing numbers and trying to be all things to all people. Where we used to know how to make really great beer, and everybody was making really great beer and chasing the greatness. Now we're chasing dollars and trying to, make sure we can exist the next year. And I get it.
Yeah.
You know, times are tough. You got to try and get the excitement out of the consumer. And you don't want to lose market share because somebody walked into your tap room and you didn't have, this or that. If you can make it, might as well make it. But like now you're just seeing it everywhere and it's kind of like expanding into the packaging lines and the distribution. And, just going through the beer aisles at big liquor stores is uninspiring. But
Mm,
I don't think that's pushing away. I don't think the kids are judging us because they're not drinking your dad's beer or your mom's beer
right.
or your great grandfather's beer. Well, probably that. But I have a hard time really think. What do you think that could be a thing?
It was an interesting. aspect, but yeah, I don't know. Like I have a 12-year-old. He has been to probably every brewery in Northwest Ohio that I've been to. But I don't see, but again, he's only 12, so we're years away from him making his own decisions to go out and
You're
what
less
he's going
than
to
10.
consume. Huh?
You said you're less than 10.
Don't make me do math. I know. So he's, yeah. So whether or not that will change in 10 years is a good question. I don't think, the PTSD aspect of it is there, like a kid walking into a brewery at 21 and being like, oh, I've been going to these things, for 15 years. Why would I go now? I don't think that aspect there. It was funny. It's a comedian. He was looking for something to
Yeah.
kind of rail against it to create content. But it was an interesting aspect. So no, I agree. I agree. I think it's going to be fine. I do like what you're talking about, just the whole community aspect, community hub, beer gardens, like that is what is going to draw people. And obviously we have big breweries. We have breweries and big craft breweries, meaning 100,000 barrel to 250,000 barrels. There's going to be those type. We're not going to see a lot anymore of that. I've always, and I'm stealing a line from my friend Scott Yarnell at Ernest Brew Works here in the Toledo area. He's like, pizza places, yes, there's huge corporate chains, but there's also your local pizza shop. And you're
Mhm.
always going to have that local pizza shop that not everyone wants to go to, not everyone will frequent, but there will be enough people to keep it going and be, people love that place. Breweries are going to be like that. I think going forward, I don't think craft beer is ever going to just like die. Like it's always going to be around. There's always going to be smaller breweries that are, like you said, if they're being creative, innovative, maybe have a few flagships that people love to have, but we're always going to have some of those people that are interested in those type of innovations, those types of trying new stuff, and not just sitting at a bar drinking the same 12 pack of beer over and over and over every single night. There are those people. We're it's just the way that American life is, but
Mhm.
there is that subset of people that are always going to be interested in going to their local brewery versus a dive bar. So I think that's the mentality that a vast majority of brewery owners need to do. And like you said, not chasing the dollars, making it be a living, not be a super profitable living, but it's a living. I think some people need to think about it that way as well, because I think in the last 10 years we've seen a lot of breweries like open because they're there for the money. And the quality can be there, the innovation can be there, but the opening up a brewery to make money is not going to be a fast track anymore. It's going to be a long haul. It's going to be slow and steady to grow or be happy with being the community hub that you are. I think those are the two aspects that we can look at.
Well, so I had a friend, my good friend Kato Welsh. She's friends with my girlfriend. She's a photographer here in Central Kentucky, phenomenal photographer, and a regular at Abettor. She shared this reel yesterday, and it was basically like we've lost a lot of creativity around us. Everything you remember when your big like macro, not steakhouses, but like little restaurants, like sports bars. I don't want to name any because I don't want to be a jerk, but like they were popping up everywhere, and they all had goofy stuff on the walls. The shenanigans idea and stuff like
Again,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like they all had the goofy stuff on the walls. They all had this like thing. They all had mozzarella sticks and boneless wings, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but like it all started to look like you know consumer swill. That's kind of infiltrated a little bit into the craft beer market.
Yep.
If you went into a brewery 10 years ago, it could be in some like derelict garage in the other side of town that nobody goes to. You're sitting on like fold out chairs,
Mhm.
and you're drinking the best beer you've ever had. It's that was the experience. You know, those
Yep.
places still exist. Those breweries, in Lexington, there's ones that are in old buildings where, it was so cheap to get in there. They had to do so much work to it, and the building's old. It has character. It's wildly unique. You're not really sitting on like the plush seats and all these things. that was the experience. And now you walk into some of these breweries and it looks like they had like your top end interior designer come in and create basically what all of these mass consumer, they look like hotel lounges, and
Mm.
it's like, what happened to the uniqueness? What happened to being in these old buildings that, yeah, the upkeep's pain in the butt. Like there's this kind of sucks,
Yeah.
we're, gentrifying neighborhoods and making them cool again. We're, diving deep into these towns and finding spaces that need to be revitalized and doing that. And craft was doing that because craft's not just about the uniqueness in a beverage, it's about the uniqueness as a person. When music was very big within craft, when art was huge into craft. And I mean, now it's just like, how do you define craft? Is it um, innovative? Is it cool still? Is it
Mm.
artistic? What is it? What makes craft so unique now? And I think as an industry, we have to stop saying, well, Gen Z doesn't drink as much. Well, the consumer's changing. Well, this, that, rising costs, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, all those exist. But we got to kind of look at ourselves in the mirror a little bit and be like, what changed? What changed
Mm.
about us? You know, the, you know, you spoke about, Ernest. Like every one of those tap rooms is unique. It's so
Yeah.
unique. Every one of them's different. We
Yep.
both know how we started and saw that first brew house. And it's like, really? That's how you started, Scott? This is brilliant. It works, but like now you see these like, $3 million breweries in a startup in a building that was, you know, built in the most prominent location with, heck, it might as well have horse pastures out back. I mean, it's insane. There's the amount of money that's going into some of these places when we used to, pat people on the back for starting up with a shoestring budget and then making some of the greatest product you've ever had and
Yeah.
making a beer that really like shook you to your core because you're like, oh my God, I never had anything like this. This is so cool. That hasn't happened to me in a long time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the last time I had a beer that I was like, wow, this this is different. And that's to me, that's the scary element of all of this.
Yeah.
Is we've sat around for 4 years blaming, the government, blaming the economy, and we can keep doing that if we want. But something's got to give, and it's we're seeing closures everywhere. But when you start seeing people talk about closures, they're like, I really liked their blonde ale, and I'm like, really? That's what you're gonna miss? Like, I really liked their chicken wings. It's like, really? Like that's I was reading an article before we got on here, and it was like, I really liked going to their trivia game. And it's like, I mean, I love trivia, but
Yeah.
that's what you remember and you're going to miss about this brewery? It's a brewery. Why are you
Yeah.
going to miss the trivia? You're not going to miss their like delicious chocolate stout that they made, once a year. And it was just the most delicious thing you've ever had that you hold cases of,
Yeah.
that's gone. What happened to that? That used to be a huge thing.
Yeah.
Um, I walked into my buddy's house over the holidays for a party. This dude had collected so much Hop Slam. It was underneath, it was everywhere. I mean, he just had cases upon cases of Hop Slam. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. It's like, it's his favorite beer. And then talk about a really great beer that was made. And I mean, that's so cool. But I remember every year it was like Hop Slam's coming out. Like, you better get it. It's going to go away soon. And nobody talks about that anymore. And
Yeah.
I want that to come back. Um, Also, last thing with the Gen Z people, when we were in our early 20s, when most people are in their early 20s, they're not drinking top shelf bourbon. They're not drinking well crafted gin. They're not drinking dirty martinis. I was, but I'm special. Or my mom tells me so. I wasn't drinking a ton of craft beer. My favorite beers in my early 20s were Heineken and Guinness. Talk about macro product, the biggest brewery family in the entire world with Heineken. Yeah, that was my favorite beer. I would drink it everywhere I went. Um, it wasn't until, probably I was 25, 26, maybe 26, 27, that I first started getting into craft and having unique um, experiences with beer. Really
Yeah,
know how that is. So I think that's, we're judging a generation that's not quite there yet.
sure.
Craft is expensive. It should be expensive. It should be charged because it's a well crafted, unique product. And when these kids start making some cash, and hopefully our economy bounces back and they can actually make cash. Hopefully they can buy houses, because I think they should buy a house before they should buy a six pack. But that's not the same thing. They're probably going to buy six packs because they can't buy a house, which we understand that too. Um, but I think that's, we're so quick to judge
Yeah.
generations and what they do and what they don't do. Heck, I mean, could we still just be judging the older generation for not diving into craft like we did? Gen X did. Millennials did. It's that older generation we don't talk about much.
Yeah, let's get on the
If they
boomers.
would
Damn you
share some of their
boomers.
wealth in the craft industry, we'd go straight to the moon, man.
There you go. There's your innovation for 2025. I want you to capture a new market, the boomers.
The
That's all
boomers.
I want. You got think of how many people over the age, I don't even know what boomer age now is, 60, let's say.
60. Yeah.
I want you to capture the 60 to 75-year-old market in Winchester, Kentucky. I want you guys to become the number one hotspot for 60 to 75-year-olds looking to get craft beer in Kentucky.
Hey, we've got we've
There's
got
your
a,
new
we've got
mission.
a good we've got a good boomer patronage. I can't knock on our boomers. We've
Okay.
got this little town's got some good boomers that come in, and now they do ask for Coors Light first, but then we move on to what they really want, which is some of our good well crafted beers.
Go. Well, cool. That anything that you guys have planned for 25 that you think are something going forward that can stick? I mean, are you like you talking about innovation? Is there things that you and Cody have talked about for your brewery that you guys want to do that you think maybe it won't even stick, but it's worth trying?
Yeah, we've got a couple of unique ideas. We launched a new, and I know this sounds stupid because it goes against everything I just said, but
But
we've
it's in the
got.
tap room.
Yeah, well, we release it a little bit
Oh,
because
okay.
it goes well in certain places, but it's just our one of our new hazies we did with some Kavik, but we do self distribution too, so we get a little innovative and then send it out to people, because we're just like, we'll let them try it, and if they're like, hey, we want to throw on a sixth of this, sure, why not? I mean, it's not something we would send out. If we were working with a distributor, we're not going to send out, you know, 10 to 20 sixtels of, but we're not really stuck in this, we have to focus on these three core brands. We kind of move around a lot. But yeah, it's one of those things like, in 2024 we really focused on consistency. Consistency has been my hot term for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years
Mhm.
even. And I want us to be more consistent with what we put out in the market, but I also want us to have some more fun in the tap room and, you know, think of new innovative ideas that are inside of beer and not necessarily, because we've gotten mildly innovative with, our seltzers and our cider lines and stuff like that, and they're fine. They do well for us, but I don't want to do that really anymore. That's something that I want to change. And I don't know how that change is going to really play out, but coming out of the holiday break, we'll probably figure that out starting next week. So, it's the same thing with Brewer. Where's Brewer going? We got to figure
Yep.
out, where the industry is and what the industry wants to know. So
Yeah.
that's
That's the one
innovation
thing.
has to come back around next year.
That'll be our
This,
next meeting. We have to hit end recording here and then start our magazine stuff. That stuff doesn't need to be
yeah,
broadcast online. We'll figure that out though.
yeah,
So,
go
but
man. I
cool. Yeah,
appreciate
we are looking forward. Like you said, this is our 13th year online, our 12th year as a magazine, technically. 12th year, yeah, 12th year. So yeah, crazy stuff. It's been a ride. And cheers to you, buddy.
Cheers. I already
To
finished mine.
2025. I didn't. I'm on my second one actually, so I didn't even get around to
Oh,
it.
I
I
didn't know
did
you
my.
had two. I messed up.
Oh wait, I got to go this way. I started with Cleveland's Headhunter, and then I went to Costco and I went with the. Have you seen this one
The
yet? Deschutes
Kirkland
is
Lager.
yeah, but it's Deschutes making a Helles for Costco. So this is kind of it's a nice little. I'm like I'm enjoying my lager. I just wanted to have a few beers. I literally just went. You had a beer in your hand, so I'm like I gotta go get a beer. So now I'm getting a beer.
Welcome to the modern age of craft.
Uh, well, Tyler, thanks for joining us. And as always, you can check out Brewer Magazine at brewermag.com. Well, you'll see us here on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're all on that, or X, I guess that's what we call it. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys. Cheers.